There is no question that I think what sets Cornerstone apart, and I'd like to think what sets us apart from other organizations around the area, West Michigan, is that we truly view each person as a gift from God. So how that manifests itself in the workplace dynamics, I think happens on a couple of fronts. On one, I think of the passage in 1 Corinthians and how the body is made up of many parts. So I think it's critical that I view myself as a part. I view each individual staff person as a part, each colleague as a part, and we all have our roles and work together, and in doing so recognize that nobody's more important than anybody else.
As humans, they're not just coworkers, we become friends and we get to know each other, and we spend 8 hours every day together, so we bond and we get to know each other like a family. Well, it makes work easier because sometimes, like in a family, you start irritating each other. You're together all the time and your differences come out, but you have more patience and you can be more humble and you can pray for each other and just kind of be more of like what the church is, because you know that they're believers and they're part of your family.
Well, it's certainly those things that I mentioned in the first question. I think another thing that I try to do personally, and I think that probably might set us apart. I think it's set me apart in some of my other positions I've had before coming here. Those other positions were secular organizations. Is that I have a great deal of trust in people's commitment and willingness to work for the mission and the cause. If I didn't, that lack of trust would be likely to produce a real uneasiness and uncomfortableness around. It would tend to create micromanagement. So I think one of the traits of my management or leadership abilities or traits is that I give someone a job to do, and I trust that, first of all, they're prepared for it, which is in part on me, but also I give them a task and I trust they'll get it done because I believe their commitment to the mission of the department or the organization will truly reign supreme in that scenario.
I think being of like-minded with the university, like having the same values and beliefs that I can support my company or the university is, as a company, as a business, if you want to call it that. Because if you don't wholeheartedly agree with the mission statement or if you don't believe in what you're doing, then you're not wholeheartedly in as an employee in rank.
A couple things pop into my mind. One is time. Time is money. The more time you have to spend on purpose and a task that is related to a positive financial outcome, the better off an enterprise is going to be. There are things in business, there are situations in business that it's easy to cut corners with compliance. Either compliance within the guidelines or rules set out in your organization, compliance with government regulations, those would be a couple of things. Compliance with truly taking care of the customer. There are areas where you can cut corners because it takes time to do those things. And that decision to cut corners is not necessarily the ethical decision, but I think that's one area that's very tempting in situations. I think the other area is from a dollar perspective. You know, we're all encouraged in business to chase a positive bottom line and a higher and increasing bottom line. So once in a while, there are things that pop up that bottom line can be enhanced by doing things that are not necessarily ethical, that are not biblical, and that's clearly when the culture of business that we are in says bottom line is of utmost importance. Very tempting at times to be unethical.
I think the most difficult is even at a Christian university, we work with outside agencies like vendors and other organizations, and a lot of times it's difficult because they don't share the same values with honesty or integrity, and but that's where I feel like I can always come back to Cornerstone, and my administration supports me and stands up beside me when I need that kind of strength. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a good example very recently. The examples all through my career and time here, but good example very recently that has to do with students. I'll be really transparent with you here. In the world I worked in, it has to do with development or advancement, or generally also known as fundraising. We have the ability to access information by virtue of FAFSA, by virtue of financial information that students provide. That's how a student gets financial aid, by revealing what the need base is, right? And that's how a student is able to obtain scholarships, grants, loans. It's a good process in that sense. We could access that information to identify students' families that have appreciable wherewithal or wealth, to make it easier term, that would allow us to identify them and perhaps in a fundraising role seek their support. Okay? Government says we can't do that. Government says that would be non-compliant with our arrangement or agreement as a higher education institution. I don't know that the government would ever know that if we did it. They could find out. We're not going to take that chance. That's the law. That's the regulation. We'll refrain from tapping into that information for purposes other than it was stated. Mm-hmm. That's an example of an ethical issue that recently we, in a sense, confronted or were given the opportunity, if we so chose, to skirt around that.